Hey folks, we're back once again with a 2D action roguelite with an awful lot of mechanics to talk about from Aeternum Game Studios, who were kind enough to provide the key for the purposes of this review. So let's get started. This is the good, the bad, and the bland of Summum Aeterna. Summum Aeterna is a prequel to Aeternum's previous game, Aeterna Noctis, and puts players in the shoes of the King of Darkness, an immortal being whose main goal seems to be maintaining power and control in the current cycle. And how else would someone named the King of Darkness maintain power other than by massacring every living and non-living thing in the realms that end up in his way? Don't worry too much about needing to understand the story of Aeterna Noctis though, as that's about the extent of storyline you're going to get. There is a mild amount of plot, but most of it is just lore drops and slight character interactions. So if you're looking for an intricate or involved narrative in your roguelite, then this probably won't hit that itch. But how did the runs work? Well, each run has the player using a seed to start up a run. These seeds will have a variety of effects, both positive and negative, that you can see beforehand, as well as which area the player will start in. Eventually even being able to adjust the seeds yourself with consumable items found during runs. The gameplay during a run is typically pretty close to what you'd expect from a 2D action roguelite, with rooms being filled with various enemies to fight through and traps to avoid, all while looking for chests for both in-run and post-run currencies, shops to purchase new weapons, or finding gems to socket into your weapons to give yourself buffs, and eventually find the exit and proceed to the next part of the area. One particularly nice feature is the ability to teleport around the map to most important rooms like shops, so you can quickly reach the other side of the screen for certain larger areas and avoid a lot of unnecessary backtracking. Each run tends to run through 4 areas, and the areas themselves are broken up into 3 parts. Opening area, where the only objective is to find the exit. Secondary area, where you'll have to find a number of keys to open the exit portal, and then a boss fight. But I mentioned the weapons earlier, let's get back to that. The King's Arsenal starts out using only swords, but eventually adds scythe and pistols to the mix as well, with a variety of versions of each of these main types that can create slightly different playstyles even within the main weapon types. But as a rough rule, I found that swords tend to be the more mobility focused, with their secondary attacks allowing you to teleport to your thrown weapon. Scythes tend to be more focused on AoE and debuffs, and pistols tend to be for more when you want to stop interacting with the enemies and want them to die way over there. Each specific weapon has a unique mechanic, and slots for stat-modifying gems that you can find in a run, the strength of the mechanic and the number of slots being determined by the rarity of the weapon, while the damage is determined by the weapon's level. Gems likewise have rarity levels that increase the power level of their effects, which can help push a build over a line should your luck run high. Now, should you choose to change weapons in a run due to finding a higher level or better suited weapon to the task that you have at hand, you also have the ability to transfer 1 gem from your previous weapon, adding even more decision making about whether that new weapon is really worth losing your 2 other really fancy gems, as damage numbers don't necessarily mean everything. But between runs, your decisions aren't over either. In the beginning you have your well, which you use your darkness to increase your character's basic stats, but rather quickly you'll end up having a weapon forge to upgrade and unlock weapons, a tree to upgrade enemy drops, unlock new rooms, and further adjust parts of your future runs, the chaos tablets to further adjust parts of specific subtypes of runs, and the armory to equip and upgrade equipment found during a run. Aside from the well, the armory is probably the most influential way to help your runs out. Not only do the pieces of equipment grant baseline benefits to a variety of stats, equipping multiple parts of the same type of equipment grants a special bonus, from increasing your damage based on your move speed to allowing your debuffs to critically strike. Add in the ability to level up the equipment to further increase the stat buffs, and you have a bunch of systems designed to slowly make you more and more unstoppable, provided you're willing to grind anyway. Now, as I alluded to earlier, runs can be quite a bit different due to some seeds you can find or make having unique effects put onto them, such as replacing all shops with a forge to upgrade your starting weapon, meaning you will only ever have that one weapon throughout the whole run, or maybe you want to run a seed where you find tarot cards that manipulate the enemies and environments, or perhaps you just truly want to embrace chaos and fight through strange chaotic beings, with perhaps a special guest dropping in to shake things up. There are plenty of options to keep the gameplay varied with the seed system, allowing you to choose when you want to engage with it. But enough talk of the systems on systems. Let's dive into the points I really liked about the game. The game is just really fun and feels really good to play. Particularly in the sense that almost every single death I had felt deserved and was very clearly some fault of my execution, rather than to a cheap death pit or unresponsive controls. The variety of weapons is also great and led to a lot of different builds feeling up to the task of completing a run, leaving me feeling like there weren't really any useless weapons even if they didn't fit my particular playstyle. It really feels like the game is trying to allow a lot of player expression to find what works for them best, which is something I always appreciate. I also think the seed system, while a little clunky, is a really neat idea, particularly since it allows you to choose when you want to engage with the stranger elements of the games, like the tarot card mode or the forge. The art style is also quite charming to me and didn't go overboard on the effects, allowing everything to be kept track of in the frantic moments of combat. But I suppose we should go on to the parts that I've personally found to be lacking. While I found most of the bosses and mini-bosses enjoyable the first few times I ran into them, their lack of attack variety really started to make most of the fights feel very one-sided very quickly, leading to regular enemies and traps feeling like more of a threat than the area bosses. Also, while I like systems of risk and reward and random chance mechanics in roguelites, Summum Aeterna makes some strange choices in this regard with the aforementioned tarot mechanic. A whole cavalcade of effects can take place at different times depending on the card, up to just entirely killing the boss of an area the second you reach it, which honestly felt a little bad when it happened. This is also more just a personal pet peeve of mine, but the game does very little to showcase when a buff or debuff is affecting you, the only indication tending to be a glowing aura around your character. Additionally, this is more of a problem when starting out, but there doesn't appear to be any way to actually look at what your weapon's secondary ability actually does, or what it's called, which was initially quite confusing with the Sice in particular, since quite a few of the specific Sice reference it by name without informing you what that name actually means. Now, let's talk about the rest of the stuff. As I sort of alluded to earlier, I found the pistols to be in a really strange place, mostly due to how far the auto-lock for them was, and with a few notable exceptions, how they allow you to sit back and not deal with most of the enemy's attacks while putting out quite a bit of damage. Additionally, a lot of the game's more interesting systems, like the ability to adjust and manipulate the siege you want to run, tend to require a randomly dropped vial from bosses or chests to utilize, with specific functions requiring specific vials. So if you like playing with tarot cards, or random chaos monsters, or some combination of the other systems in the game, you have to hope to luck into the vials to do so fairly consistently. The gem transfer and weapon system in general in a run tended to feel a bit lackluster as well, usually ending up with recycling about 90% of the equipment found, as it typically barely constituted an upgrade until a few levels in, where the weapon levels would start to spike up. The translation is kind of odd too. It's not so bad that it's incomprehensible, but it definitely feels pretty rough at times, and can make some of the game's hints for how to upgrade certain weapons a little bit more cryptic than anticipated. Also, it feels really strange having the character portrait of the King of Darkness with dark hair, while in-game avatar King of Darkness has kinda white hair. Just a little jarring for a while is all. With that stuff out of the way, let's head to the wrap-up. Summum Aeterna is a pretty fantastic roguelite that has a couple minor problems, but nothing that stops it from continually being a really good time to play. It's got just enough variety to be an entertaining time for quite a few solid runs and beyond, with systems to continually grind to get ever stronger and face ever more challenging seeds. So if you like roguelites, particularly of the hack and slash variety, then Summum Aeterna should make a great addition to your library. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll hopefully be back soon with another review, and until next time, take care.